Welcome to Invest in Yourself, the Digital Entrepreneur Podcast. Join the podcast mogul Phil Better as he interviews successful entrepreneurs that make their living in the digital world. Now, let's join your host, Phil Better, and his special guest today on Invest in Yourself, the Digital Entrepreneur Podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Invest in Yourself, the Digital Entrepreneur Podcast. I'm, of course, your host, Phil Better. I am so happy to introduce our guest today. I had a great time chatting with them just before we jumped on here, but they are a #1 best-selling author, keynote speaker, consultant, and visionary business leader. Our guest has a significant track record of building stakeholder value, which means driving innovation and profit growth among world-class, highly profitable brands such as PepsiCo, Pizza Hut, McDonald's, Frito-Lay, JCPenney, NBC Universal, and my personal favorite, the Cheesecake Factory, right? Who doesn't love a good cheesecake? But today our guest serves as the Chief Growth Officer for Leaf Growth Ventures, LLC, a consulting from inspiring individuals, teams, and organizations to find a purpose in fulfilling their true growth potential while making a positive, a lasting difference in the world, which we all want. Our guest has just released his new book titled The Purposeful Growth Revolution: 4 Ways to Grow from Leader to Legacy Builder. Please welcome our guest, Mark Mears. Mark, thank you so much for being here.
Phil, it's my pleasure. I appreciate you having me on today.
I'm excited to get down and learn all about you because you've worked with some amazing brands. You're an innovator, if you will. From my just reading that, I'm like, I know you have so much to offer. But I want to hear from you. Who are you? What do you do? Who is Mark Mears?
That's a question that's probably lifelong, and I ask it in my book. I talk about it's not about what do you want to be when you grow up. It's who do you want to be when you grow up? And that thesis of who is very intrinsic to my broader idea of kind of challenging Simon Sinek, who says you should start with why. People want to know why you do what you do before they care how you do it or even what you do. And I believe in that to a point, but I believe that we should start with who, and specifically who we serve. And so when you ask that question, for me, I start with who I serve. And there's 4 realms of service as I see it. Think of a 4-circle Venn diagram. They're all intertwined and revolving around purposeful growth. There's spiritual realm. There's a relational realm. Could be your family, your friends, your neighbors, your communities. There's a professional realm, your coworkers, your clients, your customers, or even your communities you serve as one of our stakeholders. And then your personal realm, your mind, body, spirit, and soul. And I think of it as, we're 4, balanced, sometimes more than others. We're whole people. And that interaction is so important. Those who may be of spiritual don't say, hey, God, I'll see you on Sunday, but I got to go to work on Monday. We take our spiritual belief systems and values into our workplace and vice versa. We do that with our relations. We do that with our health and well-being. If we're not taking care of ourselves, we're no good to the other 3. So I'm just a kid from the west side of Wichita, Kansas, where I grew up. Very proud to be a Kansan because I love the state motto, ad astra per aspera. And that means through the stars, through difficulty. And so, no, I didn't grow up on the mean streets on the south side of Philly or wherever, but a very suburban background and very, while Wichita is a fairly big town as they go in Kansas, it's not compared to some of the major cities I've lived in. I've been fortunate to have lived in Chicago twice, Dallas twice, Atlanta, Los Angeles, and Austin, Texas, and Wichita. So my kind of Midwestern upbringing and value system is kind of the rock that I've built a foundation on as I've kind of gone through schooling and career and life, which has kind of gotten me to where we are today.
I love it. I love it because that I feel a lot of people from the mid states, like right in the center, they're the most humble, down to earth people. They're like the rock solid of the earth people. You know, they're down to earth. They don't have the big ideas of people on the coast because people living on the coast can see out into the abyss, right? That's what I think it is because they can see
Yeah.
out the horizon. Whereas people in the Midwest, they have to stay grounded because they got just ground around them. So
Yeah.
I love how you took in that approach in business too.
Well, I'll challenge that a little bit because I believe I am a visionary,
Mm,
and I've been able to see around corners throughout my career and innovate, as you mentioned earlier. But it was all of my experiences that shaped that. Okay, so where I'll agree with you is I do believe kind of the Midwestern part, the heartland of America. You learn a work ethic, you learn a value system, you learn to make commitments and keep commitments. Your word is your bond. And then you also have this idea of wanting more and better than maybe your parents had it. And
mhm,
then now, as a parent, I've always wanted more and better for my kids. And I think, while that may be universal, I think it's really more so in the Midwest because it's, for as a very agrarian society years ago, it was hard living.
mhm.
And you had to be rough and tumble, and you had to be resilient. And the weather isn't exactly always pleasant. It surprises us every day. And so when you have a lot of those just major life challenges, I think it also helps you when you now embark upon a career and understand that there's going to be times you're going to get knocked down. You need to be resilient. You need to make and keep commitments. You need to be true to your word, and your values need to be rock solid. So it's a great place to have grown up. And now I'm living in Kansas City. So I'm not that far from where I literally grew up, but I went to the University of Kansas undergrad and then Northwestern in Chicago for grad school. And, kind of years after traveling the world and living in different places, I've learned a couple things. One, people are people wherever you go. You know, in Atlanta, they may talk a little differently. In LA, they may dress a little differently. In Chicago, they for sure do in the winter.
I can
And
attest to that.
yeah, you living in Montreal, but Chicagoans are about as proud of their city and their heritage of anywhere I've lived in the country, other than when I've lived in Texas a couple of times. They're pretty proud of themselves too. But the point is, we're all people and we're all trying to figure things out. And so I really appreciate you bringing me on today because I want to learn from you just as much as you want to learn from me.
Oh, I love this is the conversations I love when we get to go back and forth and
Good.
learn from each other. Mark, since you've worked with all these big brands, I'm going to take it that you may not have been an entrepreneur from birth. And specifically coming from the Midwest, generally, if you're an entrepreneur, you're probably doing the farm stuff, or you're working somewhat with under a parent or something like that. So, how did you become an entrepreneur? What was that spark to jump you into the entrepreneurial world?
Well, I never set out to be an entrepreneur, and you're right. I didn't grow up, and I had friends who did. They had paper routes, they had lawn mowing, services in the summer. They did anything and everything to make money. Well, I was really into sports, so I didn't have a whole lot of time for that. I was a swimmer full time. I played football and ran track and field, and even in the winter, we had a church league basketball team. So I was playing sports, and I was in school. But a pretty serious competitive swimmer, and that just doesn't leave you a whole lot of time for that. So I never thought I would be an entrepreneur, and I went through kind of the liturgical kind of linear steps that I think most of our parents taught us: is get good grades, get a job, get promoted, get married, have 1.2 kids or whatever, and then put away a little money for college, and somewhere in the realm of 65, maybe you want to ride off into the sunset and retire. And so I thought that's the path that I would be on, and I was for the most part of my career. I did all those things, and it wasn't until I got this epiphany now about 10 years ago that came after a pretty hard lesson in corporate American business. I was the president of a $500 million casual restaurant chain based in Southern California. And we had a parent company that owned us in Ohio. And they recruited me for my position as chief marketing officer for the Cheesecake Factory. And you're right, who doesn't like a good, indeed great piece of cheesecake?
But if you were hired for marketing, you did a great job at that company, sir.
Easiest job I ever had. They sold itself, I'm telling you. And probably one of the best cultures I've ever been a part of. And I learned so much from David Overton, the founder and owner, and things that I put in my book, which you can read about. But this particular company, I was recruited to take on the role of president and turn it around. It was down double-digit negative in sales. It had kind of gotten a little old in the tooth with its brand positioning, and they wanted to create kind of a new concept that they could put capital behind. They had, as a publicly traded company, it's all about return on invested capital, right? You want to increase shareholder value, which I've since now changed to stakeholder value, because it includes community, includes your team members, it includes your customers or clients or guests. In my case, it's not just about those who pump money into the market and expect a certain return. It's all of those stakeholders. Well, anyway, this was about February 21st, and we had just sold the brand, and instead of giving us the capital to turn around, we got the first time of several times I've heard this, we've decided to move in a different direction. The board has decided to sell the concept instead of putting capital behind it, which is what they promised when they recruited me from the Cheesecake Factory. So we put a new brand positioning out there, contemporized the brand. We turned the sales around from double-digit negative back to positive, and then we put a new concept in the ground. That showed a return on invested capital that would allow us to pay back the investment almost 2 years before our pro forma originally projected. Well, they found a new buyer who we thought would be a perfect fit for us. Little did I know that you'll close on a Friday, and Monday morning at 8 o'clock, I have a meeting with the new CEO to kind of plot our future together. Well, at 8:05, I'm out the door. We've decided to move in a different direction. What, over the weekend? And within the next 2 weeks, my whole executive team was let go, and they brought in a whole new team, and they moved the office from Southern California to their other office in Dallas. And lo and behold, I'm thinking, so that just happened. Well, the very next day, after a fitful night of sleep, I go outside and take the dog to do this thing, and Phil has got as my witness as the sun was coming up over this wall we had in our backyard. We had a fig tree that was barren from the 6 or 7 weeks of winter that we do get in Southern California. But there on the end of one branch was this tiny little green sprig of a leaf just starting to form. And it was there I got this epiphany that all growth happens through the leaf of a tree or a plant, and a leaf is a symbol of growth and rebirth. And I took the dog inside and I went in my office and started banging out kind of a treatment on my computer for this idea. And I realized that when I was president of this company and leading this turnaround and engaging people on a deeper level, I got to thinking, well, there's this thing called the rule of threes. And basically it suggests if you focus on three things, you get a better shot of achieving your objective. And I thought, as a kind of young leader, that sounded good to me. And my three things were leadership, engagement, and accountability. If we do these three things, if we demonstrate leadership up and down the ranks, if we engage people's heart, head, hands, and habits to get totally committed to this turnaround, and if we hold ourselves, our people, accountable, because we are accountable to shareholders, we are accountable to our parent company, we're accountable to our guests, we're accountable to our team members in the restaurants, and we're accountable to each other within the corporate support center. And if we do those three things, we're going to be really, really rocking and rolling. And we did. And that's how we did the turnaround. I would use that as a mantra in weekly emails or in meetings. And back then we had, voicemails you could broadcast. And, we had 10,000 team members across 145 restaurants in this almost $500 million enterprise. So when the rug got pulled out, I realized that maybe there's something missing. And for me, I connected the dots to this idea of what was missing was F, fulfillment. We were chasing numbers to chase numbers. We were sacrificing time away from our families. I commuted from Valencia down to Orange County which if I were to do it every day, it'd have been over 2 hours per trip. So I got a hotel down there across the street from the office, and I went down on a Sunday and worked long day Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Came back Thursday night, and I was home for my family Friday, Saturday, and Sunday when I wasn't traveling. Board meetings, prep for board meetings, follow up for board meetings, and going to visit restaurants as we then embarked upon all this. So I felt like not only was LEAF a symbol of growth and rebirth, but also an acronym, which now stands for leadership, engagement, accountability, and fulfillment. Back to that 4-circle Venn diagram, all revolving around purposeful growth. And so I had this idea. I didn't set out to write a book. I just started writing this treatment for this concept. And then, I got another C-level job, and on vacations or weekends, I'd take some time out to work on this until it chased me to where I finally had to be caught. It was one of those things that was so clear to me, this is what I should go do. And with no entrepreneurial spirit, I finished the book by working with a wonderful author group called Unleash Your Rising. I recommend it to anyone who's thinking about writing a book. I never set out to be an author. I never set out to write a book, but I got to the point where I couldn't say no to this calling. And so I finished it and then used it as a platform for speaking, for business consulting, and I'm working on an e-learning curriculum that are all based on this book as its platform. So while never setting out for it, I'm here, I'm committed, and I'm learning every day on what does it mean to go from corporate America team guy to solopreneur with only 3 employees, me, myself, and I.
I love
And
that.
often we don't agree, but it makes me sound more important if I say I have 3 team members.
I like that. I have 3 team members as well. Well, I've officially hired my first team member, so we have 4. But for a long while, I was Phil, Tom, and Gary on my team answering emails. But now I've officially hired my first editor to take on some roles. So that felt nice. But I never thought of me, myself, and I. So I love that. And how are you finding it going from corporate America? It's like, you weren't just corporate America, you were corporate America. You were C-suite, you were in the big leagues. Like, I've talked with corporate America people, some people who are in the trenches, usually mid-level managers, never someone who's in the C-suite execs jumping over into the life of an entrepreneur, and not only an entrepreneur, an authorpreneur.
Yeah.
How was that, like, that shift? Like, was it a hard? Because, like, you have to make your days, like, you're used to doing the 9 to 5s or the travel, and now you don't have that,
or the 7 to 8s or 9s and travel and all that. Absolutely. And it was incredibly hard. And I thought finishing the book was hard, and it was. But I will tell you, there is no greater satisfaction other than getting married and having kids and watching them be born than having that book arrive in an Amazon box at your front door for you to approve it and them to go to press. And and then hitting bestseller status, I literally jumped for joy, because every entrepreneur and every person, if they're being honest, including myself, needs to get the FUD out. And FUD is an acronym which stands for fear, uncertainty, doubt, and delay. And the fear of failure, no one knows me, and what if this doesn't go over very well? The uncertainty of giving up a fairly comfortable status quo to do something I feel called to do, and there's a risk reward factor there. And then this idea of doubt, those background voices, kind of like wet cement that start to harden if you allow them to. Nobody knows you, leads to, imposter syndrome, and then maybe self-sabotage. And then all that leads to delay, because after those 3 things, who wants to move forward? But I've also, in that process, found the antidote to FUD. And it starts that faith overcomes fear. It could be faith in a spiritual, deity.
Religious being.
It could be faith in yourself and your abilities that are God-given. It could be faith in the mission that you're on to do what you're going to do. And I'll explain where this comes from in a minute. And then uncertainty. I believe that hope can overcome uncertainty. If you don't have hope, well, then you kind of become hopeless. And if you let that harden, it becomes hopelessness. And without hope, and they say, well, hope's not a strategy. Well, it sure as heck is. Because if you don't have that in your toolbox, then that uncertainty is going to lead to safety. And I love this quote from a gal named Gloria Milichik, which says, a comfort zone is a beautiful place, but nothing ever grows there. So when you talk about this idea of being uncomfortable, we'll get there in a minute. You got to become comfortable being uncomfortable. That hope has got to spur you forward through those uncomfortable times so that you turn uncertainty into certainty. And you use words and mindset training that says, instead of, I can't do this, say, I haven't done it yet. And that's a big difference. And when you say, I can't, those are the most terrible words that you could ever feed your brain. But when you can turn it around and say, I just haven't done it yet, or haven't mastered it yet, that gives yourself grace and space to allow yourself to overcome the uncertainty with hope. And then belief overcomes doubt. And that seems like an obvious one. Again, believe in whether it's a spiritual advisor, whether it's in yourself, in your abilities. And again, believing that what you do matters. And then finally, that leads to action. Indeed, purposeful action, not just action, because that's chicken with your head cut off stuff. You may just feel like you're being productive, just getting stuff done, but you're not taking purposeful action towards achieving your purpose in life, in work. And so that is going to overcome the paralysis of delay. So I've had to learn all those things. I had to go through every one of those steps. And so I want to share with entrepreneurs who are feeling the FUD, or those who think they want to become entrepreneurs, you can get the FUD out. Having faith, hope, belief, and taking purposeful action will help get you over the hump. So now I'm in it, but I'm in it to win it. And I have a different mindset than when I started.
Oh, I love that. And it's very true. I've had that mindset shift as well. It's taken me time because I'm a stubborn person and thinking I can do it. But also have it, like you said, that cement in the back of your voice, in the back, and you have to chip away at it because, for a long time.
Let it harden, because what it does, you're right. Then you got to chip away because cement's not easy to get up when it's hardened.
It's a constant battle to keep it chipping away all the old cement that stayed for not 30 years, but a decade of negative thinking, so. But yeah, I love that you said, like, I love this acronym of FUD and just doing stuff, fear, underestimating, delay, and then it was delay and
fear, uncertainty, doubt, and delay.
Doubt. There we go. I love it because it's true, because everybody has that, and I get it. Because I'm starting a new project as well. I'm going from podcaster because I feel like I've mastered podcasting. A decade in the industry, helped a lot of people make their money from podcasting, growing podcasts. So I'm trying to be a copywriter now with an email, and like I've never done that. I haven't written emails, and I am so fearful. And for a long time, against the advice of my some mentors I had, I was like, I'll start an email list. I'll start a newsletter later.
Someday.
Someday. Fear, uncertainty, doubt, delay, and then finally
wash, rinse, and repeat. Right?
Yeah, pretty much all the time. I sit down to write. I might have nothing to write about, and then I would interview a copywriter. They'll be like this, and I'm like, I'm re-inspired, and then I'm like, no one wants to hear me. That's
you got to surround yourself, Phil, with yay sayers, not naysayers. There's too many people that actually they think they're being supportive, like they have your best interest at heart, but they're killing your dream.
I know,
and it's your dream. It's not theirs. And to truly be supportive, they need to listen to you and hear your passion and then find ways to support you. And you're not going to have good days every day. I certainly don't. But I surround myself with people who understand the journey that I'm on and pick me up when I'm down. And that's the other advice I would give to, early entrepreneurs. Those of you who've been doing it a while, you already know this. But those who are early in the game or those who are thinking about leaving a job. So when I talk about uncertainty and leaving some of those companies that I shared with you, it's because I felt a calling so deep down in my heart that I couldn't say no to it. I thought I projected ahead. And there's another quote that's anonymous. I don't know who said this, but they said, some say the definition of hell is when you die, you will meet the person you could have been. Now think about that. And that was enough to get my butt on fire and finish my book and say, what would happen if I just kept telling people, I'm working on it, I'll get it done someday, and then I didn't take the steps to get it done? I would have regretted it for the rest of my life. Now, having done it, having overcome my FUD and turning over a new leaf, and that's not meant to be cheeky because it's in my book, but it's also an acronym. It says you got to be teachable. You've got to be willing to be uncomfortable. You've got to be responsible, whether the outcome is good, bad, or otherwise. And then you got to have a no return, burn the boats mentality. You can't look back. It's like once you're, on a high wire and you're balancing, you can't look back. You can't look down. You got to look straight ahead and keep moving forward. And then again, when that book arrived and I then went through the whole, bestseller euphoria, it's like the Sally Fields quote at the Oscars years ago. You like me. You really like me. But I had to have that, being told to me by other people because I didn't believe it myself. And even though I had a bunch of yay sayers around me, it was tough getting people to read my book draft or manuscript and critique it and give me feedback. They were all, oh yeah, I'll do it. And then life got in the way. And so I kind of felt like I was flying blind, like I didn't know what I had. But God put some people in my path that gave me the strength to move forward, that gave me the honest critique I needed. And I worked with a professional editing team that did a wonderful job of telling me, what I needed to hear. And so I would make the changes instead of just, clinging to, my own vision of what things should be, to say, I got to listen to people who are going to be people that read it and make sure I'm communicating and connecting with them on their terms, not mine. I already know what I'm writing. It's got to be received by the reader and then acted upon, or otherwise it's nothing but a vanity project. And that is what I'm here to do. And I'm here not to just make quick bucks. I'm here to fulfill a purpose statement that I wrote. It's physician, heal thyself. I have to drink my own Kool-Aid, right? Mm-hmm. So the purpose statement I came up with when I started working on this project was, I don't want to just make money and retire. I want to make a difference and inspire. And that means making a difference in the lives of others and inspiring them to want to do likewise, or what I call paying it backward. And I say pay it backward, and I use a lot of these phrases in the book that are designed to make people think, because most people would go, oh, let's pay it forward, right? Mm. Well, I don't think so, because when I go to Starbucks, and not only am I a growth junkie, I love growth in all of its terms, spiritual, relational, personal, professional. I can't get enough of it, but I also love coffee. And I love Starbucks coffee. So when I go through the drive-through, I will invariably pay for the car behind me and say a silent prayer as I'm driving away, and let them know that in that moment, someone who doesn't know them and they don't know me thought enough to provide them with, whether it's a cup of coffee or sometimes it's actually been fairly expensive, but I'm committed to it because it's not a random act of kindness. It's an intentional act of kindness. And I think of it as paying it backward because I can't physically pay for the car in front of me. They've already gone. So I pay for the car behind me. And oftentimes I hear they do likewise. It's part of the law of reciprocity, Phil. It says essentially that if someone does something nice for you, you feel this deep-seated urge to do something nice for someone else, and oftentimes in greater measure. So now when I go back to that purpose statement about wanting to make a difference in the lives of others and inspiring them to want to do likewise, that's where I get this idea of paying it backward. Imagine the cars paying to the car behind them, the car behind them, the car behind them. It happens. I've been told that. And so for me, that's a metaphor of this broader idea of sharing the wisdom and experiences, the good, the bad, and the ugly, by the way, throughout a 35-ish year career with some wonderful mentors who I speak about in the book, and some great lessons, but also observations of others who I admire, a curation of research that supports my thesis, and then also subject matter experts that can go deeper, and they're smarter than I am. So that's kind of now become my solopreneur story, and the carrot that motivates me to get up every single day and keep moving forward in purposeful action. And so I would advise entrepreneurs, if you're doing something just for the money, you might as well roll back in bed, because if you don't have a purpose beyond that, that won't last very long. It'll spur you for a while, and don't get me wrong, we all need to make a living, and we should, but it's purpose and profit, and not or. And so if you can find a way to inject purpose into your passion of what you want to do, you want to now be a copywriter, you've done podcasting, you have taken it to great heights, you have helped so many people, you've spread knowledge, you should be very proud. That's what I mean by going from leader to legacy builder, paying it backward to help others, not just leading in the moment, but planting seeds and fertilizing them and creating opportunities to help others along their growth journey. And that's what drives me, and I believe that's what drives you.
Oh, it certainly does. Like, which with my next question, before we jump into the next question, this is definitely a legacy question, and it's not for me, it's for my nephew. But I wanted to touch on that because there's this quote, and I'm going to be paraphrasing it, but I'm pretty sure you've heard it. It's men plant seeds that of trees that they'll never have the pleasure of sitting under the shade. Yep. I know I butchered the quote, and I'm pretty sure someone's listening to this podcast episode right now and going, I can't believe he messed up a simple quote. And it's just saying the quote, but obviously everybody.
Yeah, I've heard that one before, and there's one similar from a guy named, I think, Eric Erickson, who says, I am what survives me.
Ooh, I like that too.
And it's similar to what you just said, because when we're gone, and that's why I don't define legacy as something you bequeath to somebody you love after you're dead and buried. I call it creating a living legacy. We are all given 24 hours in a day, and we're all given a choice for the most part of how we spend it. And so when you talk about that seed that grows the tree that someone may never see, we have the opportunity to pour ourselves back into people. And whether it's using your time, your talents, your treasures, what I call your triumphs and travails, which are your experiences, again, the good, the bad, and the ugly, to help mentor somebody and help kind of bring them along their growth journey in whatever season of need they may be. That's really important to me. And I wish I'd have known that maybe even earlier in my career, because again, like I said, I felt like I was on a treadmill, and it was, there's different cultures, the PepsiCo culture, which was competitive and hard driving, and others that I've been in, and you don't have a chance if you don't take the chance. You have a choice, but if you don't use that choice to help others along the way, you're missing an opportunity to plant those seeds earlier, and maybe you can enjoy the fruits of that tree earlier than waiting until you're gone.
Oh, I like that. And now this brings us, because it's interesting, because now we're going to go to the question that I love. It's the spark question. What's a single piece of advice out of this whole episode? Because you dropped like golden nuggets. I'm really looking forward to getting the transcript and rereading this episode, taking out my bits and questions, because I don't like reading my stuff. I jibber jabber. I don't drop knowledge. I jibber jabber and ask pointed questions, sometimes some good ones. But anyways, enough about me. Again, what is a single piece of advice you would give your 10-year-old self? I have 10-year-old Mark right beside me. What are we telling Mark?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'd probably say that I could give you 10 answers, but I'm going to boil it down to one because you asked for one. And there was a movie, I don't know, several years ago featuring Alec Baldwin and Jack Lemmon. It was called Glengarry Glen Ross. And if you've seen it, as you're smiling, then you know the scene I'm talking about when he's in this room with all these kind of telephone salespeople trying to sell land to people from the Yellow Pages. And Alec Baldwin is up at the dry erase board and he's written ABC. And it stands for Always Be Closing. And he tells Jack Lemmon, put that copy down. Copy's for closers. Well, I would change that C to curious. Always be curious. And so I would tell that 10-year-old Mark Mears, that little rascal, stay curious, ask questions. Don't think you know everything because you don't. But learn as much as you can and be curious to ask the question behind the question. Don't just be satisfied with the first answer. Follow up with a little more of a deeper question, and then a deeper after that. It's like peeling back an onion. And then all of a sudden, your world opens up to you and you start gaining knowledge and wisdom that if you didn't ask it at all, you wouldn't get. If you only ask the one question, you get some of. But stay curious. And, we learn it at a young age. Remember, if you have young kids like I did, I think you do. But why? Well, because, but why? And then we lose that because we're tamped down by our parents to stop asking questions. Because then it becomes because I said so, right? And you need to foster that in your kids. Always be curious. Always ask the next question and the next question. Keep asking why. Keep asking why. Because at some point, you may get the answers, well, I don't know. We've always done it that way, or we've always thought that way. And that's where innovation comes from.
I love it. It's a great piece of advice. I love it. And I love the Glengarry Glen Ross, a great movie from the 90s. Such goodness. But Mark, I've had a pleasure talking with you. Actually, I haven't talked. I just listened, and it was I enjoyed every moment of it, soaking in your knowledge. I want my audience to know where they can follow you, what they can do to support you. So I'm going to give this time to you. Please, just a little bit more. Tell my audience where they can follow you to support you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Phil. It's been a joy to be on your show and give me the platform to give back, because that's what you're allowing me to do, is fulfill my purpose statement. And I would love to connect with your viewers and listeners and learn from them. And so I invite you to hit me up on LinkedIn. You can follow me, you can subscribe to my monthly newsletter, but I'd like to connect with you, and maybe we can set up some time to get to know one another. And if there's ways I can help you, I want to do that. If there's ways you can help me, I'd love to be able to call on you. So hit me up on LinkedIn, but in the immediate, maybe as soon as you can, go to my website, which is markamears.com. You got to put the A because it's for Alan. It's not for another A. I couldn't get markmears.com, and so it's had to put my middle initial there. So make sure you put in markamears.com. I'm not trying to be pretentious. And you'll find 4 ways to grow with me. There's the book, and then there's keynote speaking, there's consulting, and then there's this e-learning program that you can get on a waiting list. And when I get that finished, you'll have a chance to sign up to take a course that's all about finding in creating your purposeful growth plan, how you can meld your purpose in life with your purpose in work. And if you think about it, as adults, we're awake maybe a third of the time, maybe less. We work a third of the time, maybe less. And so, we sleep a third of the time, maybe a little more, maybe less, depending on where you are in your career. So wouldn't you want to have the 2/3 you're awake be on purpose? And wouldn't that be more fulfilling? And so start by taking my free purposeful growth self-assessment right there on my website. It'll take you about 5 or 6 minutes. And when you're done completing it, you can download a custom report with your results and some seeds for growth from me after each question to help you along your growth journey. So think of it as a bit of a benchmark of where you stand with this concept of purposeful growth. And there's also questions that ask about whatever company or enterprise or firm you work for, and how aligned are they and you together on this concept. And so that's the first place I'd go if you're curious about finding your purpose and being more purposeful, and interacting with me and seeing what I'm all about. And maybe you work for a company that's looking for a keynote speaker. We can talk. Maybe you're looking for a company or for a firm like mine that can help your company find purpose and integrate it up, down, and sideways throughout your organization. So not only do I have a personal or purposeful growth self-assessment, but I have a purposeful growth brand assessment that asks the similar questions, but gives your brand a chance to answer. So I can determine as a consultant where you may be aligned and where you may be misaligned, and maybe how I can help. So thanks, Phil, for those opportunities to let people know how they can connect with me and how they can work with me if they are so inclined.
Oh, it was my pleasure. It's the least I can do for thanking you for coming on and sharing all the wisdom that you have over your years of your career, plus your beginning of your next chapter in your life. And I'm excited to have you come back on and in like a year or even more, even sooner, with the great stories of success that you've been able to achieve.
Well, from your lips to God's ears, and I hope that's the case. I'm not use the word hope as a strategy, other than to say, if you don't have hope, you become hopeless, and then hopelessness is not a good place to be. So I'm full of hope, and I really appreciate the opportunity to get to know you better. And I love the name Phil Better. Kind of sounds like feel better, which I'm sure you've heard about 80,000 times throughout your life. But I think it's great, not a bad thing. And so I appreciate, again, the audience that you put me in front of, and I hope I haven't let you down.
You have definitely been further above the expectations I had for this interview. So, Mark, thank you again for being here. To my audience, make sure you check out the show notes down below to connect with Mark. Check out his free quiz that he has for you guys for both your personal and your business. And again, remember to always invest in yourself.